Story 1. The Royal Hawaiian Motel. I've always been drawn to abandoned places, the thrill of the unknown, the echo of stories untold. The Royal Hawaiian Motel, nestled in the desert of Baker, California, was one such place that had captured my curiosity. They said it had been abandoned for over a decade, standing silent and brooding against the relentless desert sun. It was a moonless night when I arrived, parking my car off the side of the road. The motel loomed ahead, a shadowy silhouette against the starry sky. I stepped out, the crunch of gravel underfoot the only sound in the oppressive silence. I flicked on my flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness as I approached. The motel was eerie in its stillness. The windows were shattered, doors ajar, and graffiti marked the walls, a testament to the explorers who had come before me. As I moved closer, the beam of my flashlight caught something, a glint of metal, the handle of a rusted door swinging in the breeze. I ventured inside, the air thick with dust and decay. Each room was a forgotten world, littered with debris and memories of what once was. I wandered through the hallways, peering into rooms where the ceiling sagged ominously, where old mattresses lay in heaps, and where time seemed to stand still. As I explored, a strange unease settled over me. The air felt charged, as if the motel itself was watching. I shook off the feeling, attributing it to my imagination, and continued deeper into the labyrinth of corridors. Then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. It was a woman's voice, drifting through the air like a ghostly melody. My heart skipped a beat. I paused, straining to listen, but the voice was gone. It must be the wind, I told myself, though my instincts screamed otherwise. Then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. It was a woman's voice, drifting through the air like a ghostly melody. My heart skipped a beat. I paused, straining to listen, but the voice was gone. It must be the wind, I told myself, though my instincts screamed otherwise. Pressing on, I reached the second floor. The doors here were open, creaking gently in the night air. I stepped onto the balcony, the view stretching over the barren landscape, illuminated by the faint glow of the stars. That's when I heard the thumping, a rhythmic, deliberate sound coming from one of the rooms. Thump, thump, thump. My pulse quickened, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I approached the source. I hesitated outside the door, heart pounding in my ears, before pushing it open. The room was dark, the shadows deep and foreboding. I swept my flashlight over the interior, my breath catching in my throat, as the beam illuminated a figure, a woman crouched in the corner, her forehead resting against the wall. She was banging her head, the source of the thumping, in a slow, mechanical rhythm. Fear rooted me to the spot. Her movements were unnatural, her presence an affront to the silence of the night. Then she stopped, turning to face me. Her eyes were wide and wild, her face streaked with blood and something yellow that dripped from her lips. I stumbled backward, my flashlight dropping to the floor with a clatter. She screamed, a raw, primal sound that reverberated through the walls. I spun on my heel and ran, my heart hammering in my chest as her screams followed me down the hallway. I didn't stop until I was back outside, my lungs burning from exertion. I scrambled into my car, locking the doors with shaking hands. In the rearview mirror, the motel stood dark and silent, as if mocking my fear. I drove away, my mind reeling. I knew I had to tell someone, but who would believe me? The police? They would dismiss it as a trespassing escapade. So I called my friend George, a fellow explorer, hoping for reassurance. His voice crackled over the line, calm and steady. Maybe it was just a homeless woman, he suggested, but we both knew it was something more. Something darker. That night, I lay in bed, the woman's image seared into my mind. I knew I had to go back, to confront whatever haunted the Royal Hawaiian Motel. But deep down, I wondered if I would survive the encounter. Story 2. Shadows of Bryce Hospital. When you're young and reckless, the idea of exploring a haunted place is irresistible. That's how I found myself at the gates of Bryce Hospital, a defunct psychiatric facility rumored to be haunted by the souls of its tormented patients. My cousins and I, thrill seekers to the core, had driven hours through the night to reach this forsaken place. It was past a.m. when we parked at the end of the dirt road leading to the hospital. The building loomed ahead, a dark monolith against the night sky. Its windows were broken, the walls overgrown with vines, nature reclaiming what man had abandoned. We stepped out of the car, our breath visible in the chilly air. Armed with flashlights and nerves of steel, we approached the entrance. The door creaked ominously as we pushed it open, revealing a lobby bathed in shadows. Pentagrams and graffiti covered the walls, remnants of those who had come before us. The air was thick with dust, the smell of mildew pervasive. We moved cautiously, our footsteps echoing in the silence as we made our way up the stairs. The upper floors were a maze of decaying rooms and corridors, each more foreboding than the last. As we climbed higher, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It was as if the hospital itself was aware of our presence, a malevolent entity lurking in the darkness. We reached the roof, the wind whipping around us as we surveyed the scene. The night was still, the stars obscured by clouds, casting an eerie pallor over the landscape. We called out, our voices swallowed by the void, but there was no response, only silence. Returning inside, we explored further, descending into the bowels of the hospital. The basement was a different world, damp, suffocating, and claustrophobic. We squeezed through narrow passages, our flashlights illuminating old pipes and crumbling walls. Then we heard a soft, shuffling noise coming from the shadows. We froze, our lights fixed on the source. Slowly, a figure emerged, a man, crouched and muttering to himself, his eyes blank and unseeing. My heart leaped into my throat. We stood there, paralyzed by fear, as he rose to his feet. His movements were jerky, unnatural, and a low, guttural sound emanated from his throat. Panic surged through me, and I backed away, pulling my cousins with me. The man let out a wild scream, a sound that echoed through the confined space. He lunged towards us, his arms outstretched, and we bolted, racing back through the labyrinthine corridors. We burst into the woods, the branches clawing at us as we ran. I could hear his footsteps behind us, relentless and unyielding. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't dare slow down. Eventually, we stumbled onto a trail, breathless and trembling. We followed it, hoping it would lead us back to the car. An hour passed before we saw the hospital again, a specter in the distance, and relief washed over us. We reached the car, but as we did, a rock flew out of the bushes, striking one of my cousins. The man emerged, wild-eyed and feral, and we scrambled into the vehicle, locking the doors just as he reached us. He pounded on the windows with a glass bottle, his screams muffled by the glass. We drove away, the tires kicking up dirt as we fled. Silence filled the car, the reality of what we'd encountered settling over us like a shroud. We never spoke of that night again. The hospital remained, a monument to the horrors we had faced. And though we never returned, I knew it would haunt me forever, a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the veil of reality. Story 3. The Haunting of Georgia. I was 15 when my brother Seb first introduced me to the thrill of urban exploration. Seb was fearless, always seeking out the abandoned and forgotten. And one summer, he convinced me to join him on a trip to an old house rumored to be haunted. The house stood on the outskirts of a small town in Georgia, hidden from view by a thicket of trees. We parked the car in a secluded spot and set off down a cracked concrete path, the grass tall and untamed around us. As we walked, we noticed a woman following us, her hands clasped behind her back. She seemed to glide over the ground, her eyes fixed on us with an unsettling intensity. "Lovely day today, isn't it?" she called, her voice soft and melodic. Seb and I exchanged a glance, unease prickling at the back of our necks. We quickened our pace, but she matched it effortlessly, her smile never wavering. Then, as if deciding she'd had enough, she whispered, "I have to go to bed now," and vanished into the woods. Shaken, we continued to the house, the encounter leaving a chill in the air. The building was derelict, vines crawling over the walls, windows shattered like jagged teeth. We climbed through one of the broken panes, careful not to cut ourselves on the glass. Inside the house was a time capsule, furniture draped in dust, old photos yellowing on the walls. We moved cautiously, our flashlights casting eerie shadows as we explored. In the kitchen, we found food left to rot, the stench of decay permeating the air. The basement was our next stop, its stairs creaking ominously underfoot. It was darker here, the walls pressing in, the air stale and suffocating. We edged forward, our lights revealing piles of junk and old, discarded toys. Then came the sound, a soft thump from above. We froze, straining to listen, but the silence was absolute. We dismissed it as the house settling, but an unease settled over us, a sense that we were not alone. Returning to the ground floor, we headed upstairs. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with doors that stood ajar, inviting us into their depths. Seb led the way, his flashlight sweeping over the peeling wallpaper and cobwebbed corners. We entered a bedroom, the furniture old and worn, an antique dresser standing sentinel by the window. As I rifled through the drawers, Seb's voice broke the silence, laced with fear. "Hey, look at this." I turned, following his gaze to the end of the hallway. There, framed by the doorway of another room, was the woman from earlier. Her smile was wider now, her eyes dark and fathomless. "Do you want to see what's behind my back?" she asked, her voice a sing-song lullaby. Panic surged through me, and Seb didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed my arm, and we bolted, fleeing down the stairs and out into the daylight. I glanced back, half expecting to see her at the window, but there was nothing, only the oppressive silence of the house. We ran until we reached the car, hearts pounding, breath coming in ragged gasps. As Seb drove us home, we couldn't shake the image of her smile, the feeling that she was watching us even now. That night, I lay awake, haunted by the encounter. The house stood abandoned, a relic of the past, but its shadows reached out, a reminder of the unseen horrors that lurk in the forgotten corners of the world. Hey there, it's Mr. Night Horror. If you enjoyed this eerie journey and want to dive deeper into the shadows with us, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more spine-chilling tales tomorrow. Stay haunted.